DeSantis takes aim at Biden's new Ministry of Truth during press conference. Now, here's a guy who's standing up. I don't know if DeSantis will run if Trump runs. I think he said he won't. But let's talk about what's going on with Joe Biden's Ministry of Truth. Speaking to reporters in Williston, DeSantis started the discussion about the board by saying he honestly thought it was just a belated April Fool's joke. They're actually going to create in the Department of Homeland Security a Bureau of Disinformation. It's basically a Ministry of Truth. What they want to do is they want to be able to put out false narratives without people being able to speak out and fight back. They want to be able to say things like Russian collusion and perpetuate hoaxes and have people like us be silenced. And Jen Psaki said that she believes the intent is to stop disinformation. How does the government stop disinformation? Yeah. Here's the example I gave. Ian, what color is the sky?
Dark black tonight.
Depends on what time of day you ask, I guess.
Seamus, what color is the sky?
I'm taking his answer.
What color is the sky?
I'll go with blue.
We have two different correct answers.
Hold on.
The sky is blue, right? But at night it's black. But it's not really blue during the day. It's just the refraction of sunlight. It's actually black. So depending on which way you're looking, it's the 6 and the 9 thing where people are looking both ways. The government can use whatever justification to claim something is fake news and then eliminate it. Mm-hmm. They shouldn't be allowed to do that under the First Amendment. I'm willing to bet they get sued into oblivion and this gets struck down by the Supreme Court.
Oh, I think this goes more back to what was being discussed before. That's the whole idea of self-censoring. It's not that they're going to come out and put you in a gulag, right, under the Bureau of Misinformation. What's going to end up happening is that there's going to be a strong motivation for people to not go against whatever the government line is. Like you saw that nobody put any Twitter, Facebook executive, Instagram, nobody put any of them in jail over COVID information. They just did enough threats to where people self-censored.
I'm going to tell you exactly what it will be. Open up your ears, good friends, because let me predict the future. In 1 year's time, we'll be in the throes of a presidential primary, potentially 2, if Joe Biden is not going to be running again. He says he is. YouTube will come out and say, any story in the news that goes against the narrative from the Bureau of Disinformation will be considered fake news and removed from the platform. Because we want to maintain integrity, we are turning to the experts at the Disinformation Governance Board to make sure false narratives spread by Russia aren't allowed. And then we won't be able to share certain stories because a story will come out saying Hunter Biden punched a baby and we'll be like, look at this video. But the Bureau of Disinformation will say, that's not true. That never happened. And then YouTube will say, according to the experts at the Bureau for Disinformation, that didn't happen. And you posted fake news, so we took it down.
Just like those experts from the intelligence agencies who told us that the Hunter Biden laptop story was just Russian disinformation.
You mean the woman who's literally running the Disinformation Governance Board? From Fox News, Biden's disinformation director referred to Hunter's laptop as a Trump campaign product and helped push disinformation by claiming that intelligence officials said it was a Russian collusion hoax or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrific. It's exactly what we can expect from a regime like this. However, I do agree with you that the more serious problem is people tend to self-censor. And so, look, I'm not the first to point this out, but if we had a media which was completely bought, sold, and controlled by the government, we really wouldn't expect the messaging to be any different than it currently is. They all hold to one hegemonic narrative. They're going to gaslight you and lie to you and try to shut down any information to the contrary. And even when that information gets out there, which it happens to from time to time because of the internet and the fact that we have widespread access to misinformation. We heard about Hillary Clinton's emails. We're hearing a little bit about what might be going on behind the scenes at Twitter. Project Veritas does a fantastic job exposing political leaders and organizations the left is sympathetic to. And yet, even with that information, they just say that's A, Russian disinformation, or B, a discredited conspiracy theory, or C, you're a bigot if you repeat it. And so people shut up and don't say anything.
Right.
And so they don't really need this Ministry of Truth, to be honest.
Project Veritas puts out a video showing a human being say something malicious or nefarious, and then these fact checkers are like, it was deceptively edited. It's like, but there's a video of them doing it.
Well, the thing that I get really worried about this, we had a bill someone brought where they wanted to incorporate a class within the public school system that would help children identify fake news and misinformation. Right, and me and my colleagues look at them like, this is like some Big Brother crap right here. Oh, no. We're going to have a list of groups that will come together. And you're looking at it, it's like, oh, it's the Virginia Education Association, the National Education Association. I mean, it's one left-wing group after the next helping these kids differentiate between true information and misinformation. And that's the part that scares me, because so many of the issues that we look at right now, when you look at, if you have 8 hours a day with a child from the moment they turn 5 and enter kindergarten all the way through middle school, high school, and then college, and you have essentially warmed them up to this idea that, oh yeah, the government helps you decide what the misinformation is. Then you get to a point where they don't even see it as censorship anymore. This is just another useful service that my government is providing on my behalf.
Yeah. Well,
and
we need to get a bunch
no,
of...
no, keep going. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that's the part that is terrifying to me, because again, this isn't crazy conspiratorial stuff anymore. When you actually have them setting up this department within the Department of Homeland Security, which is designed to protect us through anti-terrorism, right? That's the part where they are preparing a narrative where if you have a couple generations of this, people just start to assume this is just normal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of the reason they're setting this up is because they are panicking. They see that people are able to access this information. And so even though they've repeatedly lied, it's possible that they're starting to get worried that because they've lost their credibility, people are going to stop believing them. I would also say, piggybacking on your comments about the public school system, the fact that the government is sort of left alone with everyone's children for 8 hours a day, it's such a bizarre societal shift that we almost never talk about on the right, that people are expected to have their children educated by complete strangers.
Crazy.
That's completely unprecedented historically. You wouldn't let someone who you didn't know, who you weren't at the very least aware of their lifestyle choices, let alone someone you might admire enough to allow them to form the mind of your child, have 8 hours alone with them per day. And yet not only do we do so, but it is considered a right for teachers to be able to have access to your children in this way and even have secret conversations with them about sexuality. That's disgusting.
What did Joe Biden say?
He did.
That's true, but what else did he?
Oh man, I have no in what
you brought
what
this up the other day.
context? What
Schools and kids.
Oh, he thinks that it's the right of the teacher. They're your children. He's like, when they're here, they're your. He's talking to the teachers when he says that they're yours.
I said,
freaking creepy.
I got a bunch of people angry because I said I think a lot of parents don't care about their kids because they send them off to institutionalized learning facilities where they don't know the teachers and then just don't even know what their kids are being told or taught. That seems crazy to me. So maybe it's just my bias because I was homeschooled when I was little. My mom, she very much paid attention to what we were learning and stuff like that, and actually helped teach us. And then my dad did as well. So maybe I see that like my parents cared about what we were learning and they talked to us. And I look at these parents where it's like, I'm in Florida and my kid goes to school and I got no idea what's happening out there.
Yeah.
Why would imagine if you took your kid, went up to a random house, knocked on the door and said, can you watch my kid for the next 8 hours every day for the next 12 years?
Well, but
random person.
This is why I go back into the whole social conditioning of something. If your parents went to public school and then you went to public school and now you have your kids and you send your kids to public school, this is just something you do. There's a certain degree of social inertia with respect to some of the decisions we make, and we think if it was good enough for my parents, good enough for me, then it's good enough for my kids, without recognizing that no, the window is shifted a little bit with respect to what they're talking about to your kids. Because your kids might come home and maybe they'll be able to do the math that they were supposed to learn how to do, or maybe they'll be able to understand some of the science they were supposed to be taught. But they're definitely going to understand various left-wing concepts of gender identity.
Yep, and whether it was naive of the people at that time or whether there was some legitimate reason, they believed that the public school teachers who were going to be left alone with their children, or their children were going to be left alone with, had values that were roughly similar to their own. So they weren't going to have to worry about their child's mind being malformed in some serious way. But of course, that's not something that you can ever trust strangers to not do. And Tim, you mentioned that people wouldn't go to a stranger and say, here, have my kid for 8 hours. Today, it's even worse than that. It's that stranger coming to you and saying, you have to give me your child for 8 hours. It is my right. That's disgusting. I heard consumerism defined in a very interesting way a couple of years ago, and it was basically that it is the act of outsourcing more and more things from the household. And there are a lot of things that it does make sense to outsource, but then there are certain things that it's very strange to do that with, and I would say the education and formation of your children is one of them. And yet we've done it in the most like cynical, capitalistic, assembly line sort of way that would make even the most sociopathic robber baron blush, and it's completely championed by the left.
back in the day, I'm talking about 1,000 years ago or thereabouts, if you had the money, you could send your kid to be educated in Venice, Italy, by the most intelligent scholars of the time. And that was your choice. If you didn't have money, maybe the king would come and say, your kid's coming with me.
Or
the king could do that.
A Swiss boarding school as well.
Yeah, Swiss boarding school you get sent to. It was like, prestigious. If you knew the people they were going to go study with and you wanted them to learn that kind of thing, that's understandable. But today we have the option. As humans now in the United States, we have the option of where to send our kids. So but like you said, to give that up to the higher power, I think is lazy.
Well,
and I do think we've been indoctrinated to do
there are wealthy parents, people who know what's going on, are finding ways to keep their kids away from these schools. It's the regular working class people who can't afford it. Because, you look at some what the rich families do, or the ones who can afford it at least, they'll find private schools.
Oh, look.
They'll talk about it, or they'll send their high school age daughters off to Switzerland to a Swiss boarding school.
Well, again, there's nothing wrong. Like, again, going back to the whole capitalist thing, capitalism is also about specialization and division of labor. We're all good at different things, and we find where it fits. So we homeschool our 3 kids, right? And my oldest is 19, so she's gone through the whole process. I have a 16-year-old son, 14-year-old daughter, and here's what we found. It wasn't that we just completely said, all right, Tina and I will be the only ones educating our children at any point. No, we had co-ops that we went to. We had other things my son and I took a blacksmithing course together. So there was all kinds of ways that we could reach out into our community and find people that could educate our children on things that were either, cool and unique and in line with what they wanted to do, or was something that we couldn't do. Because bottom line, you get past 5th grade math, I'm done, man. I got nothing for you at this point. I don't know. Google it. So we still have those resources we can find. The difference is that when one of my child was struggling with something, we could find the resource that would help them. And when one of my child was excelling with something, they were able to go as far and fast as they possibly could. None of them had to sit there and wait for 28 other kids, right? Or none of them had to deal with some of I love the socialization. Like, oh, okay, socialization. My kids go to educational events. They go to political events. They go to sporting events. They go to community events. So they get plenty of socialization as homeschoolers. Now, yeah, you're right. They don't go to an institution every year where every once in a while they'll walk in on 2 kids having sex in a middle school bathroom. So they don't get that socialization, right? But that's the sort of thing that's going on. And this idea that it's either you have to be responsible for every aspect of your child's education, or you send them to a government school. That's a false dichotomy. It's not an either or proposition.
You make a great point.
I agree, but I also want to make another point here. So you mentioned that there are a number of ways that you actually can outsource homeschooling, and I agree. That's obviously very important, but clearly you're vetting the people out who you end up leaving your child alone with, and that is the important difference between a homeschool co-op and a public school.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.